polyvinyl materials comes from very simple beginnings: salt, water, limestone, and coke.
Que te arrepentirás este mal que me has hecho. ¿Sabes qué? Que no descansaré hasta verte en mis pies, eso dado por hecho.
Hello vinyl community, I'm here to do my take on Vinyl Tag 2018. So I've been enjoying the responses I've been seeing thus far. What I like about these contests is it doesn't cater to a particular niche of music. Anyone can contribute, and I really enjoy threads like these. So, I expect this to be a long video. I'm just getting into making it, so I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm expecting it could go 30 minutes. I'm not a big fan of when my videos become that long, but I'm hoping I can make it entertaining for you. I've tried to mix up my genre responses for this one. I'm not catering to a particular genre, so you're going to see a multitude of different things here. But let's get into it. Question number one: who was the first vinyl community member that you happened to catch on YouTube? So the first person that I caught was a guy by the name of, or he went by the handle Dan in Canada. Now this is when the vinyl community just started to coalesce into a thing, and I was fortunate to catch it just as it, started. And I was a commenter for 5 years before I actually jumped in and started making my own videos. But Dan in Canada was impressive, and I'm showing you him here because he has his own band, and he did some promotional videos with his band. He was very eloquent in how he talked about records. He was also very diverse in his taste, and that's what I enjoyed about him. But from Dan in Canada, that's where I discovered people like Super Wes, Derek Von Higgins, which a lot of people know, Brandon, Mr. Hall of Fame, and then it just kind of multiplied from there. And there were like 20 or 30 people that I was watching in the very beginning, and it was nice because they would be responding to each other's threads, and so it was appealing to come home in the evening and someone would ask a question. And it disappoints me because YouTube got rid of this feature when they merged with Google. They had a video reply feature, which is no longer there, but somebody would ask a question, and then you go in and there would be like 20 or 30 replies, video replies to a question that a VC member might ask. So again, I was lucky to catch it when it first became a thing, and I got to see the VC morph into what it is today. Question number two: favorite record discovered in the vinyl community. This one was a hard one. Because I've discovered so many good records from VC members, and I'd have to say that every single channel that I'm watching or I'm subscribed to has shown a record that I have picked up. And I can't say I have a particular favorite because my tastes are so diverse, but I did want to tie this back to Dan in Canada because he was the one that really got me to pick up a record based on watching a VC video, and I remember it distinctly. And one of the records that he featured was Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats. So if it wasn't for Dan in Canada, I would not have made my first ever VC purchase, and this was it. So what is Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats? It's doom metal, but it's very much in the vein of Black Sabbath. The singer's voice kind of has the same tenure. It's very thin sounding, but in a good way. But here's just a clip of Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats.
Street.
Question number 3, what are your other hobbies? I have a lot of hobbies. I like photography. I like to edit videos in a very amateurish fashion like you guys are seeing. I also collect other things. So I collect books about space travel, given the nature of my job. I've gotten to work with and meet a number of astronauts. This one happens to be from Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon. This is Alan Shepard, first American in space. First person in space, Yuri Gagarin, autographed postcard which I picked up on Russian trip. I also am a big fan of art museums. I am a big fan of Renaissance art, all the way up to the Impressionist period. So every art museum that I go to, I have to pick up a book that documents the catalog. So here is one from Tokyo from their Museum of Western Art. I am also a cinephile. I like world cinema. I like classic cinema. I'm a big fan of the films of Akira Kurosawa. I also like Louis Mala, Ingmar Bergman, all the greats. So there's just a smattering of some of my other hobbies. Question number 4. Why did you start collecting? So I've always been a fan of music. I've loved music since I was young. I got really serious into it when I was in college, specifically when I started DJing, which will feed into another question, but I love music, so that's why I collect it. Number 5, do you play any musical instruments? I can play anything you put in front of me, whether it's good playing or not. It's a matter of opinion. So the direct answer is no. I don't play any music instruments. I've tried in the past. I just couldn't dedicate myself to it. Number 6, have you ever worked in a record store? So this kind of ties back to the collecting. So yes, I have. While I was in college, I worked at one of these fine establishments, which is no longer in business. Went bankrupt. And I worked all through college at a Hastings in the Midwest. Half of my paycheck went back to the store. Part of it was because I also started DJing at the same time. So when I was DJing, I did house parties, I did weddings, I did social events. When you were doing a wedding or a social event, often you would have to play music that you were not really a fan of. So I was having to buy a lot of music that I would not ordinarily listen to. But I did enjoy working in a record store. It was fun, interacting with people, trying to turn new people on to new music. You would also get kind of really wild questions from time to time, or you would have people come up to you saying, "Do you know the song that goes da 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 da?" And then you'd kind of look puzzled, and you would say, "Sorry, I can't help you." So yes, I have worked at a record store. Question number 7. Favorite album from the year you were born? What? Give me a piece of your custard pie. Tough choice today, but yeah, I love these two. I think I have to give it to this one today. Question number 8. What classic record have you never heard? So I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you the first thing that came to my mind was Joni Mitchell's Blue Album. So I really could never get into Joni Mitchell's voice, and I recognize that this is a classic album. There's a lot of classic albums that I have not heard. This one was the first one that came to mind. The theme that this album is about, so I know a little bit about the theme of this album. It just has never enticed me. I mean, a whole album about giving up your child for adoption. I applaud Joni for writing this album. I get the concept, but I really, because I'm not totally into her voice, it's kind of kept me away. And not only that, it just sounds like such a depressing subject, and I have other albums that I want to go to if I'm depressed. So that's my answer to that one. Question number 9, show a guilty pleasure record. So the album I'm going to show you, only a few of my subscribers are going to say, yes, that is a guilty pleasure. How can you be showing that? It's Eileen Farmer. So anyone that is from France or maybe one of the neighboring countries would say, why do you even have that in your collection? But, you know, look, for me, this is fantastic. I mean, I don't live in France, so I'm not exposed to it the way you are. I mean, you probably see it in a different light, but when you're kind of fumbling around in another country's music and you don't know what's good or bad, and you don't have anyone to counsel you, you don't know any better. But this is fantastic for me. Let me play a clip here. My French subscribers are going to say, yeah, you're crazy, but okay, the Americans are like, I don't see that as so bad. Now, I'm sure all the people in North America is like, come on, show us a real guilty pleasure. Okay. How about this one? Kenny Rogers. I mean, you can't go wrong with Lady. I mean, the silky strings, I mean, the stylings of Lionel Richie, who wrote this song. It doesn't get any better. I mean, yeah, some might consider it schlocky, but you know, sometimes I just get in the mood for it. Question 10. Strangest record you have in your collection. So, you know, I have the recorded oddities. I mean, I have a lot of strange stuff. So to pick one that is stranger from another, I have a lot of it. I had to go to the one that is the VC favorite. Yeah, I know this is poking up, so some of you already tell. I have to go with 4-way anal touch fight on this one. And this has a nice history in the VC. Derek Von Higgins was the first one to discover it, and here's what he had to say about it.
I think I'm going to wait for a while, but my initial thought is this is crap. It looked interesting, though. 4-way anal touch fight. What the hell is an anal touch fight? And the name of the album is Heritage. Then I looked at the titles. Power Finger. Space Ass.
What does this sound like? Are you curious? Let me play a track.
In space there is ass. Rockets have left this planet. Some space captains have died. Their bodies are preserved. Their ass hangs in space. Space ass.
Question number 11. Show a picture disc. So yeah, like a lot of people, I don't have many picture discs in my collection. And yeah, most of it is because of sound. This one I had to go for because on vinyl, the only way to get it is picture disc, and there's a few cases like that. But this is a German female that goes by Lari. This is Future Deutsche Welle, and this is trip-hopish, but the picture disc is just fantastic, and my turntable can't do it. But you really need a Technics or an Audio Technica with a photo strobe on the side to check your speed, because this, you know, this animates as you go around. So here is a clip with the music and the animation from the picture disc. Question number 12, best posthumous release. There were several albums that came to mind. The first one that came to mind was Otis Redding, Dock of the Bay. But I have that digitally. I wanted to show some vinyl for this one. And the first one that came to mind was Stevie Ray Vaughan's The Sky is Crying. This is basically a compilation of tracks that were in the vault, but fully assembled, this sounds like a complete album. It's good all the way through. I do like his rendition of Kenny Burrell's Chitlins Con Carne. Here's just a sampling of it for you. Question number 13. Show us an artist you compulsively collect. There's a lot of artists that I compulsively collect, like Floyd and Zeppelin, like a lot of people. But one of the individuals that I probably have multiple albums of, just because of the size of his output, is Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. I am a huge Art Blakey fan. This by far is probably my favorite album of his. Is it a 5 out of 5? Probably not, but it's worth it for the title track alone. Night in Tunisia. Art Blakey was a teacher. He was a mentor, and he had such a revolving lineup, and he was trying to push more and more of the members of his band into leadership roles. And in particular, I like the periods where he had Lee Morgan and Wayne Shorter and Bobby Timmons. But just to give you a sampling of the title track, it's like a roller coaster ride. It is pushing, it is driving. If there was a punk version of a jazz album, this track would define it in my opinion. So here you go, A Night in Tunisia. Question number 14. Show us a blind buy, or your best blind buy. This one I had a hard time responding to because, I make blind buys often, although, I try and give it a little bit of a sample on YouTube where I can. But this one is probably my most recent best blind buy, and that would be Get Lost, which is a comp by a German DJ, Acid Poly. This is a very interesting album, and the title really says it all. Get Lost was actually started by another German DJ named Damien Lazarus, and it's an interesting mix of music. Just to give you a small sampling of what this is like, here you go.
Have a drink with Doctor Who in my spaceship to the interstellar zoo. In my spaceship, singing Klingon, having fun. Start a fight and then be gone.
No more lessons, no more work. It is fate.
Question number 15. Show a blind spot artist. So I got to go with the first thing that went to my mind based on how some of the people have been responding to this question, and that is, an artist that you're aware of that you just haven't bothered to delve into. And for me, it's the Grateful Dead. I mean, this is the only thing that I own by them, and this is something that I picked up during my DJing days as a used album. Now, I've always found the Grateful Dead to be an interesting act. I do like a few of their songs, but, I really could not latch on to any of their real studio output. I haven't listened to, outside of this greatest hits, I've never listened to an album all the way through. Everyone that I've interacted with here on YouTube has told me that, hey, you need to get to their live stuff, and that's where I'm a little bit resistant because, getting into live stuff, I mean, you could be going down a rabbit hole, a never-ending rabbit hole. And I've seen the Grateful Dead's live collections, so that's intimidated me a little bit. So the Grateful Dead is my response to this one. Question number 16. Show your favorite cover art. So, by far, it has to be this one. The Michael Bublé Grandmother Edition lenticular cover. Look at little Michael, so cute. Now, imagine seeing a whole department store wall full of those. Yeah, it can be scary. This one was difficult for me to answer because I like a lot of cover art. There's a lot of classic Blue Note stuff that I could have picked. But, you know, the selection was too hard. But, you know, I'm going to go with the two that first came to mind. But, you know, if I thought about it more, I'd change my mind. But the first one was Tool's Lateralis, and not so much for the vinyl edition. And this is a picture disc, by the way. It's actually reasonably pressed for a picture disc. There's still a little bit of surface noise. But, you know, the reason why I went for it was because Tool has done some interesting design work, and the CD edition has this nice slip case, and then the cover art, you know, it's kind of a breakdown of the human anatomy. And, you know, I caught Tool live during this tour, and if you've ever seen them live, they feature their artwork in their stage production. It's Floydian in scope, and this is just wonderful prog metal, I want to say. If you haven't heard Tool, and this is probably the largest band I'm going to sample here, here you go. Now, the other album that came to mind when I was thinking of iconic cover art that I really like is the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. And, you know, this thing has just been replicated over and over again. It's iconic. You got the joke about the Rolling Stones here, and you got so much going on here. Even, you know, their costumes were... Coldplay had to do their own terrible rendition of it. But anyway... I enjoy this just because you have so much going on. I like classic designs, but I also like designs like this where you have a lot going on. So that's my answer for that one. Question number 17, name a musician that you've met. So I've had the opportunity to meet a bunch of musicians. I wouldn't say like a multitude, but, you know, given where I work, I mean, we do get people that come through. I mean, I could have put my hand on Bono. I could have, you know, put my arm around Moby, but, you know, I'd say the best interaction that I've ever had with a musical artist actually happened in Moscow. So I was on a long duration tour of duty, I think for 9 months in Moscow, back around 2001, and there is a expatriate bar there, or there was an expatriate bar there called the Boar House. And the Boar House was interesting. It was run by a Canadian and an Englishman named Doug and Marty. And because of the state that Russia was in and the fact that you had all these Westerners in this bar, all these prostitutes would also descend on this bar. It was a popular hangout, and I remember going there just to have a beer because, you know, it was cool because they had the sports bar set up and everything, and you could catch sports. They usually had a band there playing, which was always fun. One night where I happened to be there, in walks the lead singer and guitarist of Rammstein. And I happened to take a picture of the lead singer of Rammstein. And he was there to pick up some entertainment for the evening, so to speak. But I actually hung out with a guitarist, who is this guy right here, and we actually had a good conversation for 20 minutes, and, you know, he talked about touring in America, and that was really, I think, a couple of years after this album, Sehnsucht. broke it really big. We talked about that, and we talked about Russia, and it was really kind of an enjoyable conversation for 20 minutes. And I mean, he was not there for other business like the lead singer was. So yeah, that was probably my best experience with kind of a big musician. Question 18: show a record that has sentimental value. I have a bunch of records that have sentimental value to me, but the one that I picked to respond to this question to is George Benson's Weekend in L.A. So I have vivid memories of the song on Broadway when it was playing on the radio in the 70s, and I was very young. But for some reason in my 4-year-old mind, or 3-year-old mind, 4-year-old mind, I didn't call him George Benson. I called him Barber Jones. Don't ask me why. You know how young kids are, and I was a young kid. But my parents found it humorous, and so whenever on Broadway hit the radio, they would say, "Oh, it's Barber Jones," and they would kind of laugh and giggle. And my father passed away this past year, and my father, one of the things that he would do, he would in the evening, as he got older, was he would listen to music on his iPod. And when he came over to my house, I'd load up his iPod with a bunch of new music that I thought he might enjoy. And I got this on CD, I put it on his iPod, and the iTunes format is editable. It's an XML file, and I relabeled George Benson Barber Jones, and he thought that was incredibly funny and got a kick out of that. But if you don't know On Broadway, here you go.
But looking at them just gives me the blues. 'Cause how you gonna make some time when all you got is one thing dime, and one thing dime won't even shine your shoes.
Question 19. Show us your favorite album that nobody seems to know anything about. So I have a bunch of albums that I think nobody else knows. Of course, you can't know everything. But the one that, I've never seen anyone else show, and there's a bunch of Psych fans here, I had to show this album by the Reverends. This is just a beautiful package. All of the covers here are kind of handmade, so each one that I've seen is just a little bit different in terms of its coloring. Now I happen to get the blowout edition, so there's been several different variations of this particular record, and so here they kind of did a blowout of the label and they pressed it into the wax. And what does it sound like? Here you go. Question number 20. Show us an album from a genre you know very little about. And my response to this is there's a bunch of genres in which I feel I'm only skin deep in. And that is true of a lot of Caribbean island records. So a lot of people have been saying reggae. I have to agree, I only have a small collection of reggae. Latin America, I don't have a whole lot. And this would qualify as a blind buy for me. I picked it up within the last month, but I've been spending it quite a bit. It's from Puerto Rico, and the only person that I really know from Puerto Rico is Tito Puente. But this is Fiesta Santeria, and this is just kind of a wonderful mix of these two female singers here, Selena Rutilio and Gina Martin. Yeah, let me just give you a sample of this.
Yo sé quién me busca, que sigan tirando, que no me entra nada, 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 que no me entra nada. A mi babaló me dijo una vez, no le tengan miedo. A mi chango, en el tambor yo les contaré todas las cuitas y la maldad, que ya no existe, no existe fe, que malo piensa la humanidad. La humanidad, la humanidad, se lo pida con la fe, que yo siempre les profeso, aquí les brindo mi rezo, que nunca lo olvido.
Not bad for a $5 buy. Sometimes blind buys are worth it, and at least I enjoyed it. So if you've stuck it out this far, thank you for watching and hanging with me. I'm actually hoping that somebody will generate a new list of questions for next year, because this is genre agnostic. Anyone can contribute. For any of my new viewers that are watching me, don't just be a commenter. Feel free to make a video. I'd love to see it, and I'll catch you next time.